This is Catching Exceptions, and today I'm going to introduce you to a developer with experience from when the internet was the ARPANET, Michael Tighe. So thank you for sitting with me.
I'm happy to help out.
Where did you actually grow up? Where are you from?
My dad was in the military, so we moved around a lot when I was a kid, and we ended up settling in Boston area.
What part of Boston?
I grew up mostly in Newton. I now live in Arlington.
And did you go to school in Boston area?
I went to the Ivy League school in downtown Cambridge.
That would be Harvard.
That'd be Harvard.
And I looked it up. You were actually a history major.
I was. I decided that I was going to major in computer sciences as much as I could, and I wanted something else in my life that would keep me from being a boring person. So I actually wrote my senior thesis on medieval cartulary from the 13th century, on why people gave land to the church, and tried to deduce social patterns from that by doing big data analysis in the early days.
What were those early days? What was that in a year?
In a year? That was in 1974, was the year that I graduated from Harvard.
74. Love Story, right?
Love Story, yeah. That was one of the films from that period. I remember that one. It was pretty popular.
That's funny because a lot of the people I interviewed have come from various backgrounds. So to see another person who had not really studied computer science as a major still end up in technology you almost fit a pattern.
Well, in the early days, there really wasn't a lot of scholarship, and there weren't a lot of degrees in computer science, and a lot of the stuff was still being invented on the fly. And in the first major company I worked for, other than Digital Equipment Corporation, was a place called Intermetrics in Cambridge. And we would get down to the bars on Wednesday night and just hang out, and there wasn't a single person there who was a computer science major. We had double E, we had philosophy, we had French literature. We had just about every possible thing in the mix that all sort of came to it because it was a really good and interesting hard problem, and it needed smart people to work on it.
Give me a landscape of what the tech was like.
Tech was almost always reserved for large institutions at this point in time. Working with a guy who was doing some independent contracting, and he had a computer in his downstairs work area. It was an early Digital Equipment Corporation PDP-9. PDP-9, yes. 18-bit words, only 16,000 of them. Pretty small machine, but you could do some fairly interesting things. That was where I learned assembly language.
So today you have the luxury of working with high-level languages like C#.
That's exactly right. That's right.
All these online repositories like GitHub.
And the IDEs and all the rest of that jazz, yeah.
But in I imagine the 80s, 70s, 80s, that wasn't the case. What was kind of like the tech stack for you?
All right, so that's a really good question. I haven't given that very much thought. We were doing most of our programming on Unix at the time, and then later on Windows. The IBM OS/2 is in fact one of the systems that I worked on for a while, precursor to Windows NT. And the tech stack was mostly a really good text editor. There were regular fights about whether or not that was VI or Emacs. And then it was pretty much paper design, drawn on whiteboards, threaded newsreaders, sort of a little bit like news groups, where you kept track of your notes, and then formal design documents, which were basically text documents and drawings.
I can imagine running with 1,000 punch cards to some guy, and then all of a sudden having, tape memory was probably a big leap. What other kinds of points were there just like a big change?
Obviously, the personal computer made a really big difference. The introduction of the Apple and the IBM PC. And that made a really big difference because, especially when Apple came out with the first Apple II, it was the Macintosh. It was the first computer you ever wanted to hug. Everything else was big and clunky and kind of ugly, but here was something that was small and kind of cute that you could imagine putting on your desk at home. And that makes a really big difference because then it becomes accessible.
That's a good point. All right. Well, that's all I've got for you, but thank you for sitting with me. And at this point, you get your chance to speak to the community and give your message.
Right. So 3 things. 1, have fun. If you're not having fun, why are you doing it? To some extent. The second thing is if you're a programmer and you ever expect to see your code ever again, comment it. Just blindly saying copy A to B is your comment, that's of no value. But this is where we modify the data model to include the outside inputs. That's a really big insight. Context of what you're doing, not the details. They can read the code. What they want to know is they pick up the code and where am I in the code? So comments, I think, are eminently valuable, and I recommend that people do that. And the third thing is, yes, unit tests really do work, and they're worth it.
All right. Thank you, Michael.
My pleasure.
So that was Catching Exceptions, and you just met Michael Tighe, a lead developer at Vistaprint. Next time you see me, we're going to be getting to know somebody else. Till then, hang loose.